see. All right. Hello, everybody. Um, we're back. That's Ibrahim Kazarouni and I with another video on the current crisis in the Middle East. Ibrahim is an imam who lives in the Detroit, Michigan area. We were together for a number of years at the University of Denver's Corbell School of International Studies. He's originally from Iraq, and over the years we've become collaborators and good friends. My name is Rob Prince. I'm a retired senior lecturer of international studies at the University of Corbell's School of International Studies. For 13 years, we were political commentators on a public radio station out of Boulder, Colorado, and that is KGNU's Hemispheres Middle East Dialogues. So we've been doing since we retired from KGNU. We've been doing occasional videos on the Middle East. So this particular program is one of a two-part series. In this first part, we'll look at the current explosive situation confronting the Middle East right now. The genocide Israel has been conducting in Gaza continues. And at the same time, recently, Israel assassinated two important figures from the axis of resistance. One in Beirut, Fuad Shukr, an important Hezbollah political leader. And the next day, Ismail Haniyeh, Hamas's political leader in Tehran. And that was done on the day that Masoud Pezeshkian was inaugurated Iranian president. The region itself appears on the verge of a major war, and all the signs that one is unavoidable are there. It could break out at any moment. What we're noticing is that there's a suggestion that actually the United States is quite nervous about the possible response that the axis of resistance is going to execute in response to these assassinations. What worries them is it looks like it's going to be a concerted effort from the different elements of the axis of resistance. Ibrahim, do you detect a certain nervousness in Washington and Tel Aviv at this point in time? Why would these two countries, one which is the strongest military in the world, and the other, the fourth largest military in the world, if I remember right, and certainly has the biggest military in the Middle East, why would they be nervous?
Well, let me start, Rob, by greeting our listeners and audience. My name is Ibrahim Kazarouni, and as Rob explained, we have been political commentators for a long time. Recently, I have come back from a visit to the Middle East, Iran and Iraq, and I have noticed, investigated the current political and situation in both of these countries. Rob, to understand the nervousness and the jittiness that we have in both Israeli as well as particularly United States camp, we have to go back a little bit to some kind of what I call the existential shift that has taken place. For many years, Israelis and United States in particular assumed, or there were two primary assumptions by them regarding the relationship between Iran and the region, and specifically with Israel. Number one, they assumed that Iran does not want to face Israel face to face, and is trying to use its allies in the region, such as Hezbollah and recently Yemen and others, to confront Israel. And secondly, Iran is afraid of doing anything that ultimately would lead to what we call a regional conflict that nobody knows its outcome. Both of these assumptions or propositions went out. Number one, in April, when the Iranians attacked the Israelis with a huge number of weapons, the idea that Iran is no longer wants to directly involve or engage Israel went out of the window. And number two, recent attempt by United States and Western powers through mediation to ask Iran to tone down its response, hoping that it's not going to go into some kind of a regional conflict. Iran's response was, it is our legitimate right and we intend to execute it no matter what. This no matter what clearly indicated to United States and the Israelis that both of these previous assumptions are out of the equation, and Iran is prepared to go, even by himself, all-out attack, confront Israelis, and no matter what happened. Now, this second proposition that Iran is prepared to go all out and is not afraid of its consequences puts the United States in a dilemma. On the one hand, they want to support the Israelis, but on the other hand, they don't want to be sucked into some kind of a regional conflict that would go on for a long period of time, because it would lead to all the American bases in the region to become a soft target for the Iranians and the Iranian allies, the axis of resistance to attack in Iraq, in Syria, and as we have seen it in Yemen and other places. So the jitteriness between the Americans and the Israelis, that they are worried as to the type of the response that they're going to get and the extent of the response that they're going to get to Iran, from Iran, as a consequence of both the Hezbollah's assassination as well as Haniya's assassination, has put the Americans into a pickle. They really don't know what to do. So primarily, I tend to agree with you that there is a huge amount of concern in the region by the Israelis, and the Israelis keep sending messages out to the United States. If the Iranians attack civilian centers, we're going to respond. And Americans are trying to put pressure through mediators, and Iran is literally showing them the middle finger, get lost. Iranian designated foreign minister, in a conversation that had with the British foreign minister as well as Macron, told them that you people did not say anything about the assassination of the Iranian personnel in Damascus, and neither what they did to Dahiya with the Hezbollah or the assassination of a guest on Iranian soil. You have no right to lecture us, so you'd better be quiet. And now, this kind of attitude that Iran is not afraid to confront Israelis, and particularly United States, it's worrisome for the United States. You want to add something, Rob?
Yeah, a couple of points here. It's really kind of a new development that the United States and Israel are so nervous. And I was thinking about what's going on here, and there are a number of factors, but one of them is, since October 7th, Israel has lost, if you like, its deterrent potential. And this is really something new, i.e., the fear that its military has produced, that any military challenge to Israel will be met with such force that there will be no way to respond. And that's what, if you look at the different Middle East wars, that's pretty much how Israel has fought, not only the wars, but all these assassinations. And there have been hundreds of them over the years. These last two are really the end product. But what they're not used to is a response to the assassinations themselves. And of course, the consequences of October 7th just really destroyed the idea that Israel is a safe place and that the Israeli military can protect Jews who come to Israel and want to live there. In fact, just the opposite now. I can't think of a place in the world that's more dangerous for Jews than living in Israel, and we can talk about that too. There's one other.
Rob, can I add here, underscore your point? David Ben Gurion, when he was asked, when he was the president, as to what is the source of strength of Israel vis-a-vis the neighbors, he says the fear that we can create in the mind and the heart of our opponent, that we are invincible.
Right. Yes.
And as you asked, you said correctly, 7th of October, and what happened after the Yemeni attack, the Iranian attack, the Hezbollah attack, has clearly dispensed with the idea of invincibility. And this is one of the factors that if the United States is afraid that if the response is coordinated between the Yemenis, Iraqis, Lebanese, Iranians, and the Syrians, they are going to overwhelm the Israeli defenses. And this is something that has been spelled out by Times, Guardians, as well as economists and everybody else, that no matter how much defensive that they have, they will not be able to counter this coordinated attack. And this would lead ultimately to the destruction or weakening of this settler state that ultimately is there to protect U.S. interests in the region. And this is why it makes the United States so jittery.
Yes. There's something else going on here that's kind of, I wouldn't say it's entirely broken down, but it's starting to break down. So, for example, we can go back in history and, without a long explanation, one of the keys to colonial and neo-colonial control, whether it's the British, the French, or the United States, of the region and its resources, and of course the key one's oil and natural gas, has been its ability to divide and rule. Mm-hmm. And if without a long discourse on it, but that's basically what the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1917 was about. Slice up the region into small, if you like, quote, manageable elements or countries, the leadership of which you don't want strong leadership, or the United States doesn't want strong regional leadership. So it's always kind of gravitated, towards these monarchs, if you like, and really countries that have been leadership that's been easily corruptible. So that's what the British
puppet regimes.
Yes, essentially puppet regimes. Even though folks don't particularly like that term, it's quite accurate. That's what we're seeing, in the region. And the United States basically built since the end of World War II on the British and French experience, and kept the structures that came out of Sykes-Picot basically intact. So this was successful. Now, why am I talking about that? Because what we're seeing now, and it didn't just start on October 17th, but a number of years ago, is the ability of the people living in the Middle East to overcome that divide and rule technique that the West has used. And the main motor for that has been what we call the axis of resistance. And now their experience in fighting the U.S. interests, Israel, it's grown to such a degree they've learned how to coordinate militarily over the years. The other thing I wanted to raise here.
Now, before you go on, Rob.
Yeah.
You see, we have talked in the past yourself and myself, that we call the U.S. paralysis after the Vietnam syndrome.
Right.
The same thing is happening here. The Israelis and the Americans are trying to fight as if they are dealing with proper, what we call army, this classic army that you're going to fight. They don't understand that militia structure has a different logic and different rationale. So they are trying to structure themselves as if they are leading or fighting with an army. Their military capability is always under-assessed, the axis of resistance, thinking that they don't have anything. This is why
classic way of dealing with colonized, neo-colonized people. You underestimate.
Yeah, remember in 2006, one of our colleagues at Corbell said that Hezbollah is a bunch of hoodlums that will easily be overcome. And then until they got their backside kicked, and I told them, what happened? The hoodlums kicked you. So here it's because they constantly underestimate the military capability of these people. They constantly are surprised by the military strength. Who could imagine the Yemenis, after 8 to 9 years of war, of being bombarded by United States, by the British, by the Saudis, by the Emirates, to send a drone that would hit Tel Aviv? After 9 years, they kept underestimating. The same thing goes with underestimation of Hezbollah, the same thing with underestimation of others. So they are, number three, if in the past, say 1967 or 1973 wars, they were afraid to face the Israelis. They are these axis of resistance. They have no fear for the Israelis. They really have no fear. They would like to have confrontation and to settle their scores. So they are determined. All of the Israelis' weaknesses during the last 10 months and the Achilles heel have been exposed. When this now at will, Hezbollah is sending drones into Israel and taking pictures of all the sensitive sites and going back. When was that happening and the Israelis could not respond? So all of this, they have developed strategies to deal with the American, as you said, with the American and the Israeli military planning that constantly is evolved and developed and tested in various theaters. And this is why it underscores that if war happens, it's going to be disaster for the Israelis and particularly United States. And this is something the Israeli military are talking about it.
Yeah, a couple of things. One is about the fact that so much of the fear that both Israel and the United States have cast over the region has dissipated to a considerable degree. And I just one example of that. So when Fuad Shukr was assassinated in Beirut, something to what I think it's pretty unique. Not only did people go hide in dugouts or wherever, they came to the streets immediately in very, very large numbers. And that was something that I don't think the Israelis have experienced. And basically what they were saying is, hit us again, we're not afraid. We're not afraid. And there's something worse than our being your under your thumb. Or there's nothing worse than that. So they've gotten to the point where facing death and facing the kind of suffering that they're going through, that there so many people in the region, particularly the Palestinians and the Lebanese, basically what they're saying, their anger and is greater than their fear, and from a psychological point of view, That's something that Israel was really counted on. So there's one other.
Remember, Rob, if you look at in the past, Israelis would take the war into somebody else's land, while the
Right.
Israelis would go to the beach and swim and as if nothing was happening. Now, the war has come back to their backyard. So this is why it's new for them, and the airport is full of people that are running away. But for the Lebanese, for Palestinians, for the Iraqis and Syrians, it's a normal way of life.
Yep. There was one more thing I wanted to, well, as we start talking, once again, things come to me. But one has to do with one of the other reasons that we're seeing these changes in the region, and that is that the axis of resistance. But here again, I'm concentrating on the Palestinians and the Lebanese in particular. They have learned how to fight what is referred to as asymmetrical warfare.
Mm-hmm.
And asymmetrical warfare, for those of you unfamiliar with it, it basically pits a stronger military entity with one which is obviously weaker from a technological point of view, economic or whatever. But still, there are ways to defeat over the long run, if you like, those stronger powers. But you need a strategy that takes that never forgets. You're dealing with, as we've called them, the wounded beast syndrome, and technologically the advances have been on such a scale that we're really in a position where we know Israel can hurt the Palestinians and their neighbors, but now the Palestinians and the Lebanese have the wherewithal to hurt Israel in ways militarily that it has never experienced, and that's what the fear is about. That's what the fear, because they don't know. They actually do not know what the axis of resistance has, if you like, in its toolkit, where it's going to strike, how it's going to strike, and for the first time, they seem lost. They really don't know.
That was my point when I pointed out earlier that I said they really have no clue as to the military capability of their opponent. If it was classic army, you say it's the Jordanian army, they have 1,000 tanks, 200 airplanes, this or the other, or the Egyptian or something else. At the moment, they keep talking and they keep increasing. Hezbollah has got 150,000 missiles, no 200,000 missiles, no 300,000 missiles. They have 200,000 drones. No, they have this or that, because they have no clue.
Right, not a clue.
On a daily basis, they have to confront these weapons coming into Israel and doing the damage and not being able to respond to it. Now you have to add another component or variables to the whole equation, and that is, for the Gaza, is the existence of tunnels that gave them the opportunity to maneuver around and be mobile and confront the Israelis. But what they are afraid in the north is the tunnels that are drawn from Lebanon into northern Israel.
Oh, right.
If the war starts, how many thousands of militias are going to go under the tunnel, and suddenly they appear somewhere where Israelis, they don't want them to be?
A whole different ballgame. One more thing about these tunnels. So this is also, in terms of this asymmetrical warfare, what's really the key to the tunnels? What is the tunnel? What do the tunnels neutral? Well, they maybe not neutralize, but make much more difficult. Where we're in an area which is pretty open, a lot of desert or very dry areas, where being on the surface, air power can just devastate an opponent. I'm thinking back after World War I, when Britain was trying to control Iraq, and it knew it had to withdraw some of its forces because it didn't have the finances to keep them there. And what do? Air power, napalm, poison gas, and that tendency has continued, through all these different Middle East wars. Now, the fact that these tunnels exist, and they sound like they're actually almost cities underground. I mean, I don't exactly know, but it's been pretty clear that the goal to eliminate the tunnels in Gaza has completely failed. Every effort to do it has failed. So this is an example of, if you like, what I would call creative warfare, asymmetrical warfare that changes the chemistry of war in the region.
And by the way, Rob, the first time I think such an extensive tunneling was done, it was by Viet Cong in Vietnam.
Right. So much. They learned
both against the French, the French and against the United States.
One brief comment about Vietnam. There was one example I just remember. So the bombing campaign against Vietnam was unspeakably cruel. We talk here in the United States about the 58,000 Americans who died. We don't talk about those who committed suicide afterwards. Who knows which were many. All right. So there was that. But we forget that the accepted number for Vietnamese who were killed was 3 million. Something, yes. 3 to 4 million. Okay. That aside, one of the things the United States did was it sent these sensors, it dropped them from the air all over the jungles. The thing about these sensors were they could pick up human odors. They could pick up human odors, and so the sensors would, if the Vietnamese army unit, guerrilla unit was going through the jungle, the sensors would send a message to a satellite, and then the United States could go after them. What did the Vietnamese do? What was their creative technology? Wherever they found the sensors, they would put little bags of urine next to them. And those bags of urine, basically the sensors went nuts. And so what did the United States do? It bombed those areas, all right? And then it destroyed the sensors. And then the Vietnamese would send their military through. So I mention it because that was one example of the asymmetrical warfare that the Vietnamese were conducting. And now we see, not just with the tunnels, but the tunnels are one indication, the manufacture of weapons, a lot of which are reconfigured Israeli bombs and things like that. So we're looking at really, I hate to use this word in terms of warfare, but really creative ways to fight, stronger enemies. And so frankly, the United States and Israel were stunned. All right, now we didn't want to go on forever. We wanted to, go have this program last half hour, 40 minutes, and we're already getting close to that time period, Ibrahim. But here's kind of, if you like, a culminating question. I have a feeling, having watched as much as I could from, the Rocky Mountains here, although there've been a lot of wars in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinians, and Israel and its Arab opponents, that in many fundamental ways, and maybe we've discussed some of it, this war is different. This war is dramatically different, and the stakes from where I'm sitting are much higher, even than what we have seen until now, these 9 months. Is that a fair estimate, Ibrahim, or am I exaggerating and off base?
No, yeah, you are right, Rob. I think I'm sure it's the attack by Iran, Hezbollah, and Yemen, whether in coordination or individual, is going to come sooner or later. What United States is afraid that instead of individuals, they are going to be coordinated in a singular attack. that overwhelms the defensive system. We pointed out few of the factors that changes the dynamics, that they are not fighting a proper army, they are fighting a very agile and very adept military structure, that they have that they have perfected themselves and they have gained the experience that they need. And they are ready, and this is...
We lost you, Ibrahim. The sound went off on your side. I don't know what happened. Making these great points.
This is what
there you go. You're back.
Admission of what we call members of the Armed Force Committee in the United States, that one of the tactics being used, a strategy being used, is to drain economically both military powers, the United States as well as the Israelis. If you go back to the April attack by the Iranians, one of the classic way of creating economic hardship for the Israelis was the use of these cheap drones that they sent 300 of them, which what did it do? It triggered all the major missiles that they are supposed to be. So each one $2 million, $3 million, $4 million for $5,000 drones. And the Yemenis have done the same thing against against the Americans. This is why the American, what's his name, Mike Waltz, in the member of the Armed Forces Committee, he said that we are burning or destroying billions of dollars being burned to deal with cheap drones that the Yemenis are throwing against us.
That's right.
The Yemenis, the Hezbollah and others, they have already perfected the strategy of dealing with the superiority of the air power that the Israelis have, or possibly the Americans have, by using these various overwhelm the system. And this is what both the Times, Guardian, and The Economist talk about it, that if these three countries coordinate and overwhelm the system, the Israelis have no power whatsoever to prevent or to stop them. And they are going to hit Israel hard, and the result is going to be a catastrophe for the Israelis. So this is a fact. It's going to be hugely costly.
That's right.
For the Americans, for the Israelis. And my prediction is, once this settles, the Israel that comes out of it, as well as the American power in the region, will be extremely weaker than what it used to be before. What the Americans are trying to do, using the shock doctrine, to be able to control and the chaos and somehow impose their will, but unfortunately for them, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, one last comment from my side. I'm glad you mentioned this question of chaos, because my take about what, given what we have just described, which I am sure is spot on, it's accurate, you would think that the United States and Israel would not want to pursue the military option right now. All right. What we're saying, what we have just developed here, we're hearing it everywhere. And so the question is, why are they pursuing this? And there are a number of reasons that I can give, but one of the conclusions that they hope would come from a major military confrontation is it would create so much chaos in the region, and that chaos itself could then be used for the United States to come in and reassert its power. It's both the United States and Israel. It's deterrence, and I think that is such a fanciful notion that they're going to be able to to create this chaos and control it. It's just not going to be happening.
They are living in the past, Rob. They are living in the past.
That's that seems to be yes, that's good. So Ibrahim, is there any kind of last comment you would like to make before we, head on into the sunset this evening?
All the evidence are there for an imminent response by all these three powers, Hezbollah, Yemen, as well as Iran. I don't know when, but most probably it's going to be soon rather than later. And once it happens, it depends on the power of the United States to control the Israelis, not to escalate it even further, because all of the three parties have already made it clear that they really care less about where this war is going to go, because they know the outcome is going to be in their favor rather than at the Israeli or the American favor. And it has given them a degree of confidence and determination that they will pursue this no matter what, as the Iranians told both Macron and the Jordanian foreign minister, that we really care less about where is this going to end. We reserve the right to respond, and respond in a manner that hurts. So we have to wait and see.
All right. My final comment, for my entire adult life, I was born in 1944, a little bit before the creation of the State of Israel. For that entire period, I have heard and supported, by the way, a negotiated settlement to what is referred to as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I have a different way of defining it, to Israeli settler colonialism and the displacement of the Palestinian people. We could talk about Camp David. We could talk about Oslo. And what we have seen is a complete failure, and it's really a tragic failure as far as I'm concerned, of ending this crisis through negotiations. And unfortunately, what it looks like at this point is that the future of the Middle East is going to be decided on the battlefield. I take no joy in saying that. There's not going to be a ceasefire. That's the last thing that either the United States, for its own reasons, or Israel, for its reasons, wants. And here we are it's a really disturbing crossroads. We don't know. We're not predicting how this war is going to play out. We don't know. It's coming. And this time, it's not Israel who is going to decide basically the narrative of this war or how it unfolds. It's in the hands of the axis of resistance.
Rob, in the past, when Ahmadinejad was the president of Iran and there was a conflict between Iran and United States, he was asked that, do you think United States has the power to start the war and attack Iran? He said, without shadow of a doubt, but they can start it, but we will finish it. We will control the finish. Unfortunately for the Israelis and the Americans, the start and the finish, both of them outside their control.
Right. All right, friends, just to let you know, Ibrahim just returned from actually a personal visit to Iraq and Iran. And in the next segment of these interviews, I want to learn more about what he saw and what his impressions were in this. He's there in this moment just before this major confrontation is about to take off. So thank you all for listening and watching or whatever, and we'll see you soon. Okay, Ibrahim, good night.
Good night. Good night, Rob. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.